What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So ahead of the weekend, we did have Nintendo release an update for the Switch Online service that now has a lot of people speculating on if we could see a big game come out before the end of this year. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a big series that could actually be making a return based on some new information, and it hasn't had a relevant release from Square Enix since the PlayStation 1 days. And we'll also be talking about the NPD sales results, specifically for the PS5, the Xbox Series, and the Switch, because it looks like Nintendo might want to start talking about what's next for the Switch family. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with PlatinumGames, Bayonetta 3, and Helena Taylor. An entire controversy, of course, surrounding the latest release in the series coming up in a couple of days. Well, now we have a response from PlatinumGames. We can see this over on Twitter, where they say, "We at PlatinumGames offer our sincerest appreciation to everyone who has contributed to creating the Bayonetta series over the years, as well as the community that has served as its foundation. We give our full support to Jennifer Hale as the new Bayonetta and align with everything in her statement. We ask people to please refrain from any further comments that would disrespect Jennifer or any of the other contributors to the series." This is about what I expected from PlatinumGames to say, and I think it just provides a nice bookend to the entire situation, as even Helena Taylor's ready to move on after, documentation came out giving us the entire picture of what that $4,000 was really for, which apparently is just a cameo appearance after she turned down about $15,000 to $20,000 for the job. It's gonna be hard getting people on your side when you're talking about $15,000 to $20,000 for anywhere from 16 to 20 hours. But in this case, I think everyone is kind of moving on and has their sights set on the big release for this title, that being on Friday. Also, we now have a ton of excitement behind the Resident Evil 4 Remake release next year. And because of this, people are still kind of thinking about other Resident Evil games that have not seen this remake treatment. And it might be us getting ahead of ourselves since Resident Evil 4 Remake has not released yet, but we've had Code Veronica come up previously. Really, that was when Resident Evil 2 Remake had released, and we were getting some hints that 3 could be next, and Code Veronica technically, I guess, fits between the two of them. Well, unfortunately, doesn't look like Capcom has any plans just yet. We could see this post up from VGC citing Noisy Pixel and the series producer, who says that there were no concrete plans to develop a Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, but didn't totally rule out the opportunity, stating that if the opportunity comes, maybe. And here's the interesting situation. After Resident Evil 4 Remake, what's next? Because these remakes are clearly working well for Capcom, and I mean, Resident Evil 2 Remake has sold over 10 million copies, is continuing to roll along, and I think 4 is going to do even better than that. Do they stop at 4, or do they remake 5? Does 5 need the remake treatment, or should they go back and get Code Veronica, which, a Dreamcast game when it released back in 2000, certainly could use a bit of a touch up there minimum, especially with the remakes that Capcom's been doing in the Resident Evil universe. I feel like that would be the next big title to do, but Resident Evil 5, very, very popular game, probably a lot easier to sell overall. Oh, and there were some concerns that the Callisto protocol could be delayed out of December into 2023. That seemed to be from an Epic blog post that went up that mentioned it coming out next year. But it does appear that they have cut down those rumors completely. In fact, we can see this on Twitter from the Callisto Protocol account saying, "We're thrilled to announce that Callisto Protocol has gone gold. On behalf of everyone at SD Studios, thank you for your support and excitement. We can't wait for you to face the horrors waiting in Black Iron Prison on December 2nd. They had also confirmed a few days prior to this that there will be a 60 FPS performance mode, which is becoming more and more important now after seeing the backlash for Gotham Knights. That is more of an action game than something like Callisto Protocol, but for me, at this time, I would prefer to have that 60 FPS performance mode, even if you're turning things off like ray tracing and really nice looking fine details and stuff. To me, the motion of 60 FPS completely outclasses any of that. But good to hear that rolling into December, we will have the Callisto protocol to look forward to. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with an update that has now been announced for the Nintendo Switch with that online service. Now, if you remember, Nintendo did give us like a roadmap for these N64 releases that, when I looked at it, kind of lined up with the idea of, all right, the next time we'll have to do an update for this roadmap and tell you about more games will be around the time of E3, so June 2023. But we had a couple of 64 games to still look forward to this year. We have already had Pilot Wings release, but we still had Mario Party 1 and 2. And to me, it was like, all right, well, November, December makes a lot of sense there. But instead, it looks like Nintendo's doing something they have not done really since the initial launch of that expansion past tier. We can see this posted up over on Twitter. They say, party like it's the year 1999 and 2000, hit some dice blocks and become a superstar in Mario Party and Mario Party 2, coming to Nintendo Switch for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack members on November 2nd. Also, it's pretty funny to think about how back in the day with the N64 and the PS1, games and sequels came out very, very quick. I mean, this is 1999 and 2000. That's right. Some sequels at that time were coming out a year after the first one, or even the second or third one released. It was very, very quick. But having Mario Party 1 and 2 come out November 2nd, so just a couple of weeks from now, one, it's exciting stuff because Mario Party 2, I think looking back on it, is my favorite Mario Party. It's either that or maybe Mario Party 5 on the GameCube. I mean, the Nintendo 64, obviously, when that came out and had the 4 controller ports, really, really big deal there. And Mario Party still being a new concept at that time, with 2 being the big follow-up. Yeah, it was awesome stuff to be staying up all night over the weekend playing Mario Party 2, especially with the Western board, and you would have that fun cutscene at the end with Mario hitting Bowser with like the pop gun, and yeah, it was great stuff. But that'll have online play, which is awesome to see that. And by the way, this kind of leaves December in an interesting position because with Mario Party 1 and 2 now being crammed into November, which Nintendo has not done that since the inception of this expansion pack, when they had to drop, 8 or 9 games into the service just to at least have more than one there. They've now doubled up, seemingly to leave December open. And what game do you think that could be for? Well, it's pretty obvious. Seems like December is when GoldenEye could be coming out. And you also have to think about this. Nintendo has to line this up with Microsoft and Rare because I assume this game is launching basically across both platforms on different subscription services all at once. And with Mario Party 1 and 2 releasing so early in November, you kind of think, all right, maybe a month later, we'll have GoldenEye show up. And again, it makes sense to have that in maybe the first week of December. And it's exciting stuff. I'm gonna be curious to see how people react to it after what they've remembered for so long and not playing it and then going back and trying it out now in 2022. I think the Xbox version will be fun to go through for the campaign, but I mean, come on. We're all going to want to play online against our friends, so the Switch version, after you play through the single player initially, will be the default version to play. So I'm hoping the Switch, it does have maybe 60 frames per second, and I assume the dual analog stick mode. So it should be playable, but you will have that split screen effect. So people are gonna be screen looking all over the place. It should still be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it because, yeah, I'm expecting GoldenEye to be out in about a month and a half, I'd say. Next up, let's talk about Bayonetta 3, and a bit of a warning here when it comes to spoilers. I have had to do this for almost every Switch release, I think. Now, at least every big Switch release that had a lot of anticipation behind it now, especially with Bayonetta 3 and all the controversy and eyeballs on it. But it has indeed leaked out early. Go figure. And again, it happens. Street dates, people get the game early. That is actually what appears to have happened this time. People were having copies shipped out a week early. I don't know how or why, but that's just kind of what's happened. And of course, if one person happens to get it who, yes, can dump the game online, they will. And now you're starting to see spoilers, screenshots, videos, the whole deal pop up. In fact, people have just played through the game completely and posted the entire ending and bosses, and some have even reviewed the game. Yeah, the embargo hasn't lifted, but you can go get people's takes on the game right now. And for the most part, people seem really, really happy with the game. Go figure, it seems like it's going to be the best game in the series, especially for Bayonetta fans who have been following the plot very closely. I will admit, I'm not like really into the Bayonetta plot where I have like all the little details figured out, and it's certainly a lot to kind of take in with the Bayonetta series. I just really like the gameplay and kind of going through all of the levels, doing all the fun combos and the really big events that happen there. But obviously, on top of this, you're just going to want to keep an eye out on YouTube for thumbnails, Twitter, all these different things, because it's going to get tough as we head towards the end of this week, as everyone's already kind of talking about it online. I will say, though, frame rate has been brought up by many people, outlets during the previews, and then others online. And it's going to be interesting to see the analysis for this one, because I do kind of think the performance is going to be sketchy at times, which sort of plays into a bit of a discussion we have towards the end of the show when we get into those NPD results. Next up, let's talk about the potential return for a series from Square Enix. I was trying to figure out if we would ever see this happen again, because after Third Birthday on the PSP, sort of looked like Square was ready to move on from Parasite Eve. However, a trademark was spotted that was filed pretty recently. We can see this over on Gematsu with the Symbiogenesis. Say it, Symbiogenesis? Symbiogenesis? Let me know in the comments how you're supposed to pronounce that exactly, but this is a new trademark from Square Enix. It was filed on October 13th in Japan, so takes a couple of weeks, but it was made public. And what's happened here is people have looked into this a bit more, and it's the merging of two separate organisms to form a single new organism. And again, looking at Gematsu, is the basis for the story of Parasite Eve, which first began as a novel in 1995 before expanding into a video game series developed by Square Enix in 1998. So obviously, when people came to that conclusion, a lot of excitement broke out online, because we are starting to see these companies go back, especially with some of these horror-based games, and kind of rework them, remake them, and they're doing really well right now. I mean, we just saw Konami go all out with Silent Hill. Capcom has basically revived themselves with Monster Hunter, yes, but definitely the Resident Evil series picking up in popularity. So if you're Square Enix, why not? Go see if you can do something with Parasite Eve, even after Third Birthday that they relegated that to the handheld market with the PSP, and a lot of people kind of look past it and they're like, we can forget about that release. I just think of the PS1 releases of Parasite Eve 1 and 2. Let's just sort of continue on from that. And while I know many of us hope that this is a new big title from Square Enix, it's also possible it could be something very disappointing, like could be a mobile game, very possible there. Could just be a TV series, a streaming series, or a movie, which, hey, some fans would probably enjoy that anyway, because it would continue on with the story, or maybe do a full reboot of it. And I think if some of these streaming movies or series end up being popular, they indeed could lead to different games being released. So if anything, be happy that Square appears to be prepping something for Parasite Eve just based on this trademark. We'll just have to keep an eye out and see what they have for us. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the NPD sales results. This, of course, being for the month of September. And I was curious how this would play out, mostly because Splatoon 3 came out. It was very, very popular all across the world, and with the NPD, they don't count digital sales for Nintendo, so it's already kind of at a disadvantage. But I was really curious to see how things would go for the Switch when it comes to hardware sales. Well, let's take a look here. This from Matt Piscatella, where he says, improved supply of PlayStation 5 was a primary driver of the increase, with PlayStation 5 ranking first in both unit and dollar sales. So the PS5 does continue on from last month as the best-selling hardware in the US. But it gets a bit interesting here with the Switch, which did rank second in unit sales among hardware platforms, but the Xbox Series actually brought in more revenue over the Switch. And this is something we would hear about between the PS5 and the Switch. Oh, the Switch sold the most units, but the PS5 made the most money, which kind of indicated it was pretty close, right? We had to take two different sources of data just to show how each one was doing, because it wasn't as clear-cut as this was one and this was two. Now we're talking about the Xbox Series even outpacing the Switch. And the thing that was weird to me is if we take a look at the overall game sales, we can see FIFA 23 at the top. That was number one. Then Madden 23, then NBA 2K23, which makes sense. Sports titles do very, very well in the US, especially in their opening month. And Madden, with football season in full swing, that's going to be up there in the top 5, probably for the next month or two, even after these charts. But then we go down to number 4, which was Splatoon 3. I think that's very, very good. Obviously, digital sales not included. I still believe with Switch sales in particular, I think it's 50-50. I think you could take whatever the sales are for physical copies and just double it, and that'll give you what the overall sales trajectory would be. Below that would be The Last of Us Part 1. That does include physical and digital sales. Then Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection, Saints Row still hanging out in the top 10, by the way, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Elden Ring, and then Mario Kart 8. So we have Splatoon 3 doing really well. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if it was number 2 even behind FIFA if you had the digital sales added in. But it didn't really have much of a boost for Switch hardware, and that's typically what you expect if a big-time game comes out that has a lot of interest behind it. People will then buy the system to go along with it. But in this case, the Switch is actually kind of falling down in terms of its placement. And I know people keep bringing up the stock situation for Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, but I kind of think going into 2023, that will be resolved. Mostly because, I mean, it's anecdotal, but I can go on Amazon right now and buy a Switch OLED or a Redbox Switch or a Switch Lite, and it'll be at my house in 12 hours. I go by the Walmart, the Target, or the Best Buy at my house, and they have 20, 30 of these things in stock. They are stacked up. So the Switch itself, very, very easy to get right now. I don't believe that the chip shortage or stock situation is what's really affecting the Switch's placement. It does make me wonder if we are getting to a point where they're running out of people to sell the Switch to. It's very possible since they're already at 111 million. We'll have a new report, by the way, with updated numbers from Nintendo on November 8th, so we'll get an idea there. But this is kind of the position they found themselves in with the Wii, and then they went to the Wii U, but they waited too long to go to the Wii U. They could have extended that generation, I'm sure, with a Wii HD or something, but right now, they still have a very popular system. The Switch is still selling, even though we're seeing it kind of fall down its placements there when it comes to revenue generated. You have to remember, the Series X is $500, the PS5 is $500 for their top models. The top model of the Switch is $350. That said, this might be a pivotal point for Nintendo to decide going into 2023 with something like The Legend of Zelda launching big-time title, if it is time to start at least talking about what's next for the Switch. Is it a new revision that would fall in line with the Switch family, or is it a next generation device? I think if it's a revision, you start talking about it ahead of the Legend of Zelda release. If it's next gen, maybe you got to go all the way until, I don't know, the summertime before you start talking about it there and try to get it out the door for the holidays. So definitely a crucial 12 months coming up here for Nintendo and how they want to handle really the back end of the Switch's life. Remember, in March, we'll have completed 6 years on the system and be into the 7th year of the Switch. Seems like it might be time to start deciding what's next for the platform. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you picked up a new Xbox Series console, which one did you go with? 74% said the Xbox Series X, 20% said the Series S, and then 6% said both. That's what I would be expecting for people who are definitely plugged in overall and keeping up to date on gaming news and stuff. We tend to go for like the higher end model and all of this. The Series S, though, I do see in stock quite frequently. Every time I go to like a Walmart or Best Buy or wherever, there's a Series S there ready to be picked up. So I do think we are seeing more of a mainstream adoption of the Series S. Any of the sales charts where we actually have hard numbers like in Japan, the Series S is outselling the Series X. There's also a lot of promotions that are being run. I think at one point the Series S was $250 and it came with a second controller or a game. So it's kind of hard to turn that down because then you'll look at that and say, okay, well, I'll also get Game Pass, and all of a sudden you have a pretty big library of titles for $250 and you have that second controller. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Delivered saying, I love how they kept Leon's one-liners for the remake. While cheesy, it does show how much he had changed since the second game. You have to keep those in there. For longtime fans of Resident Evil 4, it would have been a big deal if they removed the bingo line or any of that. Fortunately, it's been confirmed that that is still in the game And it kind of, I think, provides a nice contrast. Yes, it's cheesy, but they're going for an even darker tone for Resident Evil 4 to make it even more scary. So you kind of have that really dark and brooding atmosphere. And then he mentions bingo. That's where everyone's going, right? Or send me the bill for the damages. Little things like that. It kind of lightens the mood slightly before it then just plunges you into darkness completely. So I like the idea of keeping those in there. It's just fun. It's a video game, and I'm really looking forward to this game dropping next year. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Nintendo doubling up on Mario Party 1 and 2 for the month of November? Do you think they're clearing the way for GoldenEye to finish up 2022? And then also, what about this Parasite Eve trademark that Square appears to have posted up? Would you be interested in seeing them try to revive that series? And then the NPD results for the Switch seems to show it falling down a bit in terms of sales. Do you think it's time for Nintendo going into 2023 to talk about what's next for the platform? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.